Hey everyone, it's Schmuckles. Today we're going to debate which killer is most likely for the November license in Dead by Daylight. We know from the roadmap that it's going to be a new license with 2 new survivors, a new killer, and no new map. And the focal point of this video is going to be that Matthew Cote talked about Star Wars in Dead by Daylight. This has now hit the mainstream media. DBD Dev confirmed Star Wars discussions with Disney are a fact with iconic killer included. And Cote said, I actually had never seen a direct translation of this. I had a conversation with our contact at Disney where we mentioned Darth Vader. That's happened. That's a fact. It's important to clarify here too that Darth Vader and the idea of Disney, Star Wars, and DBD was something that was mentioned with a Disney contact. It's not necessarily confirmed that it's coming into the game, but the reason this is so important is because this validates rumors that we actually heard about all the way in January. That means that a high percentage of Black Veil leaks have actually come out to be true. Darth Vader and Disney Star Wars was mentioned in that set of rumors. We also heard in a recent interview in one of my previous videos that Matthew Cote admits they could have done a Survivor, but they chose to focus on a map in Springtrap. The only thing that has not come true from Black Veil is that Michael Afton came in with the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter, and since all of their stuff has been credible, it seems like it's entirely possible that all the way in January or whenever this person actually got the information, there could have been a Survivor in the pipeline that ended up being scrapped somewhere along the way in the process. So the one thing that happens to not be true, it seems like based on how credible the source has been and the fact that Matthew Cote is saying they could have done a Survivor, I'm not really sure what happened internally, but it could have been reasonable grounds for them to anticipate Michael Afton as a Survivor in DBD. There's no question we have 4 clear top candidates for this chapter, right? Jack Baker, Vecna from Stranger Things, The Conjuring, and an Indoraptor from Jurassic World. So this is our Dead by Daylight debate. Who is most likely? We'll start with Jack Baker, and Black Veil is now a semi-credible source, so it's going to be a big part of this debate. Black Veil leaks suggested that Resident Evil Part 3 was wanted by Capcom. We know that the devs also alluded to more Resident Evil content at PAX East. Those would both be points that are supporting the argument that Jack Baker is the November license. But there's also the point that Eric Pope somewhat debunked Resident Evil for November. While that is not absolute, that is working against a Resident Evil Part 3. Something that's really interesting too is Gorgira thinks that Jack Baker is November. Take a look at this screenshot here that my VIPs posted in my server. The same person who told me Tokyo Ghoul said Resident Evil Part 3 with Jack has been in talks since Part 2. Really interesting to see. And Gorgira straight up said Resident Evil Part 3 is November. Gorgira was someone who was in the inner circle with information, you know, so there was all those leaks that came out around the same time with Tokyo Ghoul, right along with the Houndmaster. Seems like Black Veil had a similar source too, but Gorgira does like to troll and mess around from time to time, so I'm going to put a little question mark there, but it is just interesting to see that Gorgira thinks Resident Evil is November. Devil's Advocate too, it is possible that Capcom wants Resident Evil Part 3 in DBD, and possibly they're even talking a new chapter right now, but maybe this chapter is not for November. There's nothing definitive that I've seen that has said Jack Baker is the November license. I've seen a lot of things saying like Capcom wants Resident Evil Part 3, Jack Baker is the talked about killer, but possibly these leaks are suggesting that it isn't for November. And another thing too, I saw this on Twitter on June 6th. Jack Baker for DBD said, as unrealistic as it sounds, I'd love to see another Resident Evil chapter based around Resident Evil 7. And Death Dork said, haha, it would be cool to see Jack Baker just walk through breakable walls. This is on June 6th, 2025. This is the community director of Dead by Daylight. She helps run the Dead by Daylight Twitter account. It just seems like there's no way a dev would respond to this and say it would be cool to see Jack Baker in DBD and run the risk of the public seeing this and people making videos on this and saying a dev is saying Jack Baker is coming up, or a dev is saying it's cool that this license is going to be in DBD. Is this license next? So I'm putting this on our list. On June 6th, Death Dorks mentions Jack Baker in DBD on Twitter, and I'm putting this against the case for Jack Baker as a new killer. Our second candidate is Vecna from Stranger Things, and from the thumbnail you can already tell I think this is the front runner. So if you don't think Vecna is the front runner for this chapter, this is now my job to convince you that this is the front runner. The first and most obvious thing, Stranger Things Season 5 timing. You have all the dates aligned in the PTB and the live release, perfectly aligned with Stranger Things Day and the release of Volume 1 of Season 5 of Stranger Things. This is something we talked about in a previous video. And something I don't see enough people talking about too, which is my second bullet point, is the Stranger Things back in DBD timeline. This is probably the strongest argument of this entire video. So let's take a second to review the facts of the situation. Stranger Things returned to DBD because there's a lot going on at this time. November 6th, 2023, Stranger Things returns to Dead by Daylight. Behavior tweets about this. It's crazy viral Dead by Daylight news. Well, shortly after January 9th, 2024, Gumpy leaks that a D&D Vecna chapter is coming for the anniversary for Dead by Daylight. So it seems almost confirmed that the Vecna D&D chapter was in development before Stranger Things returned to DBD or before Netflix reached out to Behavior again. Anyways, April 7th, 2025, Matthew Matthew Cote's interview with the King, Cote is licensing content for 2028. This is April 7th, 2025. That's pretty far in the future. So what we're questioning here is, what if in May 19th, 2023, Cote signs a deal for Stranger Things Vecna? The reason I'm picking May 19th, 2023, although Stranger Things returned on November 6th, May 19th, 2023 is when Matthew Cote did the interview with Slasher Radio and famously pretended like they had no contact with Netflix when he actually had. So we actually think that Netflix had reached out to Behavior about the return of Stranger Things into Dead by Daylight on this date, May 19th, 2023. So remember Matthew Cote's interview with the King, April 25th, 2025. He says that he's licensing things that are going to be in 2028. So we'll just say January 2028. That's pretty far ahead in the future. If Matthew Cote signs a deal for Stranger Things version of Vecna in May 2023, we would then be seeing that chapter finally come into the game on November 2025, and it's timed with Stranger Things Season 5. Well, Matthew Cote's interview with the King, April 2025, saying he's licensing things in 2028, he's pretty much admitting that he is 32 months ahead of the live release schedule. Meaning if Cote licenses something now, it is not coming into the game for another 32 months, which is crazy long time. So if Matthew Cote had signed a Stranger Things deal in May 2023 and it's not coming into the game until November 2025, that is 30 months of time. In my opinion, that is a reasonable guess that if he licenses something in May 2023 when Stranger Things says, hey, you can have our content back in your game, let's talk a new chapter too. 30 months of time before it actually joins the game is a reasonable time frame, because he has admitted in April 2025 that he is licensing things that are not coming into the game until 2028. So he gave us the 32-month time window, and if Stranger Things is the November license, it's a perfect fit of a 30-month time window. So I think the timing lines up exactly perfectly correct for Stranger Things to join Dead by Daylight this November. Not just from when Season 5 comes out, which could have also been part of the plan, but just how far ahead Cote is in the future too, which I think is a really strong argument, and using facts directly from Matthew Cote. So our Stranger Things timeline here, May 2023, Matthew Cote signs a deal to license the Stranger Things version of Vecna into DVD. After this contract was potentially signed in May 2023, Cote said that the Stranger Things version of Vecna could come in as a standalone new killer.
To be absolutely transparent in this, it would never prevent us to do a chapter and add the Vecna character from Stranger Things. These two can live in the same Dead by Daylight world without a problem, right? Because they're not the same thing. It's not like adding a second version of Michael Myers. It's got nothing to do with it. Those are two completely different licenses. They live in different worlds. They are the property of two different entities. Therefore, there's no way in hell we would use a license and put a legendary skin from a different IP on an existing license. That's just not a thing.
And then even after this point too, in the King's interview with Matthew Cote, King and Polly ask him, will we see more Stranger Things content in DVD? And it seems like Cote is really playful here and pretty much gives them the answer is yes.
Yeah, Matthew, do we expect any more Stranger Things content coming in the future? Have you been talking to Netflix?
I'm tempted to do my super annoying me sort of thing and go, oh, I don't know. Do you expect any more Stranger Things content? Because that's how you worded your question. But I know that's not what you're asking. And that's one that I am unable to answer.
I mean, we haven't seen any new Stranger Things content at all since the return of Stranger Things to DVD, and it seems like he is highly suggesting here that we're going to see more Stranger Things content. So I think Stranger Things is most likely going to be the November license. I thought The Conjuring for the longest time, but after analyzing the facts of the situation, Stranger Things has kind of got to be number one for me at this point. We were pretty sure The Walking Dead is the next license in this game. The first time we heard about The Walking Dead leaks from Gumpy was when I posted this video. This was on May 13th, 2024. The day I posted this video is when Gumpy commented, I never said The Walking Dead isn't happening. AMC reached out back in the fall. There wasn't space for this year. They're keeping it on ice, waiting for the perfect time slot. And Gumpy is one of the most credible leakers. So if actually truly AMC had reached out to Behavior in fall 2022, The Walking Dead coming in around July 2025 is also around 32 months. So that tells me that that whole 30 to 32 months time window is the correct time window from when Matthew Cote licenses things into the game to when they actually appear on live servers. So I think the entire theory checks out for that. That's probably the strongest theory that we have so far. The Stranger Things back in DBD timeline works out perfectly. The only X that this license has in our debate is that the Black Veil suggested that there's no new Stranger Things content or no more Stranger Things content coming to the game, right? Take a look at this. In January, this is when this came out. Reiteration that Stranger Things will not receive new content clarified there is a chance for the next season, unlikely. Demogorgon at one point was going to receive a legendary cosmetic. So the question is if Black Veil is legit. It seems like part of the information is legit. To mention a Star Wars discussion that is later confirmed by Matthew Cote is crazy. How could they have access to such information but somehow not get it correct that Stranger Things is coming as a full chapter in DBD? Another thing too is that Matthew Cote mentioned Stranger Things to Saw Palin. Remember, he said he also confirms he knows people want new Stranger Things content and he says the door for it is not closed. Why would Matthew Cote actually volunteer this or mention this information if Stranger Things is the November license? I'm not really sure what to make of that. So for Valak from The Conjuring, we had the Stephen King New Line theory that we talked about in this video. Definitely watch this video if you haven't already. You can click on the title above if you want to see that video. But here we pretty much speculate if Behavior wants to get the Pennywise license into the game, it's possible that this is the reason they mentioned Stephen King in this interview. If they were to bring in or establish a relationship with Stephen King and they already would have New Line on board for a deal like that, Stephen King would be the last piece of the puzzle to get Pennywise into the game. Valak from The Conjuring would make the most sense for the November license if they truly did have a good relationship with New Line Cinema, and our Stephen King New Line theory to get Pennywise in the game is correct. Also, they have the Behavior Atomic Monster connection with the Dead by Daylight movie, and Atomic Monster is a film production company that is associated with the new Conjuring movie that's coming out this year. Warner Bros is looking to license. We saw Multiverse's game shut down, and the leakers from Fortnite pretty much said Warner Bros is going to be looking to license their IPs into third-party video games, which immediately made us think of Pennywise and Conjuring for Dead by Daylight. A giant X here is that there's no mention of The Conjuring from the Black Veil leaks. There's a lot of information, a lot of licenses discussed. Conjuring is not mentioned at all from Black Veil. And the final killer in this debate is the Indoraptor. The Black Veil leak did say that there was a Jurassic chapter in the works. However, this Jurassic leak included a new map in that set of leaks. And what's adding even more ambiguity to this Indoraptor argument is the chapter could have been changed or scrapped or pushed back. Remember that Ruthless sort of backpedaled and said Jurassic World isn't even coming this year. The chapter has been pushed back. So that adds a lot of question marks to this argument. Could the chapter have changed and is coming in November with no new map? Is it true that the chapter got scrapped or pushed back as Ruthless is suggesting? Another thing too is that Ruthless was saying that it is the chapter that is following Five Nights at Freddy's. He said Jurassic is the next chapter after FNAF. So is November actually pushed back? They have an original chapter between the FNAF license and the November license. So is November pushed back? That would actually be a point towards the Jurassic being the November license. In the King's interview with the Dead by Daylight developers, we had a dev say they wanted to see Jurassic in DBD, and I don't think a dev would have said that if it was right around the corner going to be joining Dead by Daylight. And also, we can't forget that Masuster said that the Jurassic rumors were fake. This was right at the beginning of the year when Tokyo Ghoul was coming to Dead by Daylight and there was a 2v8 Resident Evil event. Masuster said, just want to say that even though Tokyo Ghoul is real, that Jurassic World collab is made up. So don't believe everything in here just because some of the previous rumors were real. So Masuster put here in the leaks tab of the old DBD Leaks Discord, the Jurassic World collab is made up. So Masuster is against the idea of Jurassic on the shortlist for the November license. So these are all the facts of the situation. This is the debate. All of these options could make sense with no new map. But maybe Stranger Things the most, I don't know, what do you think? And maybe Netflix wants that Stranger Things chapter to be just like the Stranger Things day on Fortnite where they reveal new content, but in this case it would be a Dead by Daylight chapter. We also saw that Fortnite and Netflix's Squid Games are going to be collaborating. This was confirmed by Fortnite Korea. It was confirmed on June 11th that Squid Game is coming to Fortnite on June 27th, so Netflix is licensing their IPs out to third-party games at the moment. So definitely let me know what you think about these four frontrunners. Who do you think is most likely? Who do you think is least likely? All of them have X's in some way, shape, or form. Right now, I have Vecna at number 1, Valak at number 2, Jack Baker at number 3, and the Indoraptor at number 4. I think Jack Baker and the Indoraptor are kind of interchangeable though. Notice how Black Veil did not mention Stranger Things content or the Conjuring content, even though I have them at number 1 and number 2. And if Black Veil's been the most credible leaker in recent times so far, then how can I possibly put Vecna at number 1, right? The answer to this question is, I think based on all the information, the Stranger Things return to DBD timeline that we actually talked talked about earlier in this video. Part of me thinks that Black Veil does not have access to this information. I think everything Black Veil has said is true, apart from Michael Afton being the survivor, which is something that definitely could have been scrapped internally, and Matthew Cote even potentially alluded to this by saying they could have done a survivor. Just the fact they didn't know Springtrap was a paragraph. They got the power right, which is something that is developed very early on. It seems like Black Veil leaks sourced leaks that were only potentially things that were known internally years ago. Matthew Cote has said pretty openly that the FNAF collaboration's been on the cards for years. Very secret, very private. So they're able to talk about all the things that were coming into DBD, right? Like the Houndmaster and Tokyo Ghoul, Capcom wanting a Resident Evil Part 3 chapter. That could have been from years ago too, if it's since Resident Evil Part 2. They knew about the FNAF collaboration. They knew about the Axe Power. Black Veil also knew about the fact that the map was going to be partially original. Black Veil did not say anything about The Walking Dead. And this is the collaboration that is most likely happening right after FNAF. How on earth did Black Veil not know about The Walking Dead? We haven't heard any information about the Asian folklore chapter from them, and I don't think Black Veil specifically said which license is November. So what I'm saying here is Black Veil did not say anything about The Conjuring or Vecna isn't necessarily a point against them, because it seems like Black Veil only knew information that Behavior had confirmed internally from years ago. It seems like they knew about all this stuff coming, right? Tokyo Ghoul and the FNAF collaboration. They didn't know about any collaborations after that, so they stopped getting access to Behavior information right after Behavior signed with FNAF, and before Behavior signed with The Walking Dead, and before Behavior signed with Vecna or The Conjuring or whatever's coming with November. It seems like the Black Veil Leaks information flow has stopped right at FNAF, because how did they not know about The Walking Dead? There's nothing in this massive set of information that said anything about The Walking Dead and DBD. So I do think Stranger Things and Vecna is most likely the November license. And it makes you wonder too, like there was a pocket watch at the PAX East event, right? Matthew Cote pulled out a pocket watch. We thought this could have been teasing like Maggie and Glenn as legendary skins in The Walking Dead, but also could have been teasing Vecna and this whole idea of time that we see in season 4 of Stranger Things. So it just makes me wonder if that pocket watch was actually teasing Stranger Things and not The Walking Dead. Maybe it was meant to kind of tease both. I have to reiterate here that nothing is absolute. Like look at this debate right now. We got X's on all of our frontrunners, which means that it could potentially be a wildcard license too. Predator is always a license that's potentially possible and discussed. It'd be kind of funny to see Matthew Cote mention Dutch from Predator just before the Predator chapters, and that's why Predator's a wild card. I mean, I don't think Matthew Cote would have mentioned the Predator license at all. There's 2 new survivors, and it seems like if Predator somehow is November, certainly Dutch is not one of the survivors. But why would Matthew Cote even mention Predator or Dutch or anything like that if it was November? This is kind of a crazy wild card at this point too, but a Star Wars Old Legend killer? Really unlikely, because Matthew Cote did mention an internal talk with Disney about Star Wars recently. He probably wouldn't have done this if it's the November license. When these rumors were going around, we talked about this idea of Abeloth coming into the game in this video. There was rumors that Abeloth was coming to Ahsoka Season 2, and now there's rumors that Natalie Portman's been cast as that part. So that's definitely a wild card option that would be really crazy to see. Jason Voorhees is also a wild card too. The Jason Universe Twitter said there's big news on Friday the 13th. This actually dropped today, and I was waiting to post this video just in case they announced today like Jason is an upcoming collaboration in Dead by Daylight. Well, the massive announcement that they did today on Friday the 13th is that the iconic horror villain Jason Voorhees is coming for you. He's going to be featured at the Universal Studios Horror Nights this year, and that was kind of the huge announcement for Friday the 13th. It was nothing Dead by Daylight related. Art the Clown's also another wildcard possibility too. They explicitly said in this video, I covered this in this video, that there's 2 video game collabs in the pipeline. There's only been 1 video game collab announced, and they've gone further with these announcements too. June 12th of this year, the Terrifier Art the Cade game released a reveal trailer and said that it's going to be available on Steam, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation. This seems to be one of the video game tie-ins that they were talking about. So there's 1 video game tie-in with the Art the Clown franchise that is unknown at this point. And then Candyman's a wildcard too, because on one hand you have Black Veil Leaks saying that Candyman is blacklisted, and Black Veil Leaks is seemingly pretty credible. Possibly that could be outdated information too. And then on the other hand, we have our theories and speculations about the Candyman termination date coming up. And right now Amazon's in their use it or lose it window to use that license, similar to how we saw Pinhead licensed into Dead by Daylight. We talked about this topic in this video. I would definitely watch that. That goes into like the nuts and bolts of the situation. But I'd say out of all the licenses out there, Vecna from Stranger Things is probably my front runner. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. Which license do you think is most likely for November and why? Are there any licenses that I missed that you think could actually be the November license? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content like this. That does it for this video. Goodbye.